Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm Danny Iniquitous. This week we are jumping into DM mistakes to avoid. This is especially geared towards new DMs or people who are thinking about DMing, so we can help you avoid some big problem areas that tend to come up a lot. So let's jump right into the video. The first and most important thing about running a D&D campaign, no matter what campaign you're running, no matter what setting, is player agency. The players must have authority over their own characters. They have to be able to make the decisions and have to be able to do certain actions that their characters would want to do. Restricting that and taking that away from players is really a punch to the gut. It reduces what they can do, and then they feel shackled. I mean, as a player, I sometimes think weeks in advance of what my character is going to do, and then to have that all that planning go out the window because the DM didn't like what I was thinking isn't a great feeling. It doesn't resonate, it doesn't feel good, it's not something that I'm going to enjoy, and then it makes it harder for me to plan forward going on. My own personal addiction to the game aside, you want people to be able to feel like their player actually influences the world. That's what gets them grounded and enveloped in your story. Let your characters like whatever they like and dislike whatever they don't, and let them take those actions in accordance with those. That is a great thing that you can build upon. These are moments that can build RP moments for role-playing groups. They can build lore moments for adventuring groups, or they can just give you a reason to go pursue certain adventures that would be more oriented with combat or whatever it is. Those things come from player agency. You want your players to make the decisions. The more actively they are in the game, the more actively they're making decisions, asking questions, or coming up with theories. It shows how much they are involved in the campaign that you're running, and that is the biggest key. Is making sure your players are involved. Let them see the reactions of what they do. They save a town from like a goblin raiding group, and then you come back to that town again and you see how much that town has prospered. And then maybe it wasn't a wealthy place, but maybe they drew a more mural on the wall of the heroes that did that, and that feels like, wow, they made a real impact. That's a great thing that shows player agencies, because the players could have opted to just leave, but instead they opted to help people, and that ended up bringing about this moment that now this town and this area matters. It's a place of joy for them in the campaign. It all comes from player agency and letting them make the choices that they want and rewarding them for making choices. Now, on the offhand, don't punish your players or reduce rewards for them not choosing what you want. Let them do what they have to, and results are consequences to their actions. If they help the bad guy, then let that play out. Don't restrict that. You know, sometimes you need to be punished for doing wrong in D&D, and that feeling is what teaches your characters that, oh, I can't trust this person, or oh, this person is bad news. Learning that is what really helps you grow in the campaign, and it's especially good for heavy RP games because you want to know who the bad guys are because everyone acts the same. Those kinds of things, reactions to their player agency, help grow them and keep them involved and gives them enemies to fight and things to dislike. Before we get any further into the video, a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. We love you guys. Thank you for supporting the channel, and check us out Wednesday nights for Critical Failures. We're part of a live stream game, and check us out on Thursdays where we stream our live hardcore adventure. We are Veldcrest. The links to all that is in the description. Now, throughout all of my videos that I did on classes and subclasses and abilities and everything like that, I always mention having a good dialogue with your DM. Now, this as a DM guide is going to be the reverse of that. Have a good dialogue with your players. Talking about the game, outside of like the immediate session, maybe they have questions or they bring up something to you, is a great thing because they will tell you everything they want, everything they're expecting, or everything they kind of hope that happens. That is really, really important because you want to give the players what they want. And having the knowledge of what they actually want and what they like and what they don't is great. Your players find a character that they like, and as a group, they like this character. Give them more of that character. Have that quest or whatever sequence they're involved in have a bigger impact. Have it lead into bigger things and make that character be important. There's no reason to just toss a character away once that area is done. You can always revisit it. You can always go back. There can always be pulls to it. There can be things that kind of give you resonance with that moment, because it could be impactful for you. You know, especially in sequences where you have warlocks or clerics or paladins or anything that's connected to a divine, a deity, or any kind of specialized event or powerful entity. They can be those things. Say your warlock made a pact, but they wanted to make a pact, say, with Pact of the Undead or Pact of the Undying, and you encountered a ghost. Yeah, maybe they made that pact, but maybe that ghost is now the representation of the spirit that they made that entity with. That's a great way to call back to something that they really, really enjoyed. You know, you can change the way a deity works with something, or a patron, or anything. And it's really cool to do that, because you can change the dynamic of their relationship and really toy with that. And that's a great thing. That's one of the reasons why I love warlocks. That being said, moving a little towards the importance of having this open dialogue and knowing what your players want helps you to eliminate things that they don't. As you're playing, and the better of a DM you get, the more malleable you are with your world, and you start to be able to change things, and you learn how to do them quickly, and you learn how to, you know what, let's shelve this for the rest of the session, and we'll pick it up next session. And you'll do things like that and give yourself time to rework whatever you have to make that stuff fit. Knowing what people want is the best way to get them satisfied, because you can give them ultimately what they want. So keeping that dialogue open is really, really important. Ask your players, hey, I noticed you weren't super talkative last time. Is there anything that, are you just not interested particularly in this particular quest or sequence that we're in? Or is there something that you're kind of pushing towards and kind of just biding your time until we get there? That is a great way to kind of understand, and a great way to share that spotlight. Not everybody's going to like everything, but you can get that encounter with that one player that loves this one character, and that character's around. Give them that moment. Let that be their moment. And then circle back to other people and trying your best to make sure that kind of keeps reciprocating, which is going to bring us into our next point. Share that spotlight. As DM, you are the person who manages the game. You are the one that manages kind of how the story arcs moving forward, stopping pointless, quiet moments and getting things to happen. You're responsible for that. That is a big part of what you're doing. Managing the spotlight is also something that you can very easily have a handle on. Now, you can't force people to speak when they don't want to. You can't force people into uncomfortable situations, because you're friends. Why would you do that to your friend? So you do have the opportunity to go say, well, what is this character's opinion? What is that character's opinion? Your character was really in touch with this, which does kind of reflect similarly to what's going on. How does your character feel about this? Your character had a very similar event in their backstory. How does your character feel about this? Giving those characters moments to express those things might be that triggering moment that gets your players to stop talking to you and start talking to each other. And that's a great moment, and that's a big breaking point in the campaign, no matter what campaign you're in, when your players stop talking to the DM and start talking to each other. That is, especially for newer DMs, when that finally happens, like that, you make that breaking point, you've done it. You've done a big thing to change the dynamics of how your group now works together. And that's something you want. Even if it's on a smaller scale where you're not heavy role players, but you're more heavy combat oriented and adventuring or whatever it is, now they're starting to plan together in group. You know what I mean? In session. And that's a key moment. That's unifying the party. That's great. And it should happen as often as possible. But as a DM, you have that opportunity to put those sequences in. You also have the opportunity, because everyone's looking at you, but no one ever is looking at each other unless they're speaking to each other. So you get to see how everyone else is doing throughout the game. So it's important to note, real life happens. People have cell phones. People have hard days. People have stuff they're going through. People have bathroom breaks. They have to get up or whatever. If you find players or just happen to be not particularly interested in this moment, it's a great opportunity for you to kind of take the spotlight away from them, because this really isn't their thing and they're really not enjoying it, move it to some other players that they are enjoying this moment, and let them carry that moment and have that be their moment, and then circle back to them later and get them kind of involved later, the people who weren't particularly interested in that one thing. Give them a moment to be heroic or whatever it is, but pay attention to them and use the spotlight moving for two fronts. Everyone should have a moment where they're that character, where they're important for that moment, whether it's arcs or whether it's just moments throughout the session that they just get to speak and share their opinions. But also because sometimes you need to stay away from people who don't want to be part of whatever it is. Not that it's a bad idea or whatever it is, their characters are just not interested in it, and to take up that time or force them to be involved is going to send the wrong message. So you want to let them just like take it easy. I'm not really super interested, but I'm cool with watching what happens, whatever. Let that play out and then move on to something and try and find something as you're going forward that does interest them. One of the things that I'll tell you as a player, when I first started playing, when there were storylines or NPCs or characters I just didn't like or wasn't interested in, I tend to just shut down and just, be respectful, not say anything negative, but just let other people do their thing and then pick up whenever it was time for us to do something else without it. And then I started to realize how that really wasn't the best attitude for me. And I started to realize that if I take interest in what the people who are involved with this, it gave me a better opportunity to role play with those characters afterwards. I could learn some of their motivations, or I have questions that I could ask them so I can understand what they're going through. And that was really, really important to me, because that gave me that moment to go, well, why are you so interested in helping out these dwarves? Like, you're not a dwarf yourself. You don't even come from areas where they live. Why them? Why don't we just leave them to their own devices? Like, understanding that moment and giving them that moment to say, oh, I was in an area before where I was fighting with a dwarven adventuring group, and they protected me and saved my life countless times. And I vow to always do right by their clan, and that's their clan. That's awesome. You can tell that story, and you can hear what their character's about and kind of the adventures they did before you guys met each other. And that's cool to me. That's something I really, really enjoy. But as a player, if I just let that moment go and didn't have any involvement with it and just kind of put it on the back burner waiting for my opportunity, then I'd miss out on that moment to create something better with the party member, to better understand the party member and something, or at least develop those kind of moments. But again, I'm a more RP oriented player, so that's kind of my thing. But as a DM, make sure to give your players opportunity to be in that spotlight, so that way they can have those moments that maybe someone might want to ask them about or talk to each other about. But also understand that sharing the spotlight means making sure the people that don't want it don't have it, and including them and making sure that when they do want it, that they get it. And it's a very noticeable thing to make sure you watch, because nobody wants to watch one player play D&D waiting their time. As a DM, one tip that is really, really valuable that I think everyone should absolutely commit to doing is take notes during your own sessions. Make sure you write down what happens and what curveballs happens, or things you notice about what your players do or how they say or do things, because that might be an opportunity for you to jump into something about them later on. Develop their character or build an arc about them because they let this information out, or because this is something that they were interested in, or it showed part of their backstory to the other party members. Taking notes helps you in a bunch of ways, because you can never really truly predict what your players are going to do. This way, you can keep a good understanding as to why they're doing these things, or how they came about these actions, or why they came about these actions, or what they're planning to do as soon as they meet someone. Obviously, you don't want to metagame, and if they say, oh, we're going to plan an ambush for this guy when he arrives, obviously, you don't build a counteract to the ambush. You let them build that. Keep notes that they wanted to do whatever. They're doing traps and this and that. And it's important, because if you don't, yeah, you could put traps on a map or something, but as you're doing it, you can set up how many checks your guy would have to make. You know, verifying that, you know, that say they did some recon and they know he walks with like 3 guards, how many guards would have to make the checks, and do that setup so you can kind of get that information already. Because sometimes these characters and these players involved in the game that are NPCs don't have stat blocks, so you do have to make them and come up with a reasonable level for all those attributes and their abilities and their skills. So take all that down so it gives you time to come up with a logical way to work that problem out without just going, oh, they spot the traps and avoid it, because that's not fun. But taking notes gives you the availability to make them more exciting moments. And that's really what you want, because just having someone walk by, oh, they hit a trap, that's it. Or have them set up multiple traps and maybe they end up luckily rolling 1 or 2 to get it out of or noticing, and then having them move forward and get caught in the third or whatever it is, sets up tension. And it gets exciting. And you want those kinds of moments for your players. Now, obviously, taking notes for other circumstances, like when your characters try to make deals with other NPCs, or they find out there's a quest, but they're trying to negotiate a higher reward, or exchange that reward for something else the players find more valuable. Those kinds of things are very, very important and can be a lot of fun to use. The best way you don't lose that is by taking notes. Write it all down, because there's certain circumstances where we all face the greatest enemy in D&D, which is scheduling. So when you go week after week without session and then you jump back in, if you don't have good notes, you're a little far behind. And that's a good thing for players and everyone involved. Bring a notepad, like write things down. That way you can have things for your character to understand, move forward, and actually evolve into greater things. Now, as I scoured the internet for information and what people commonly made mistakes out of and things like that, and what learning tools or mistakes or things that people would advise themselves not to do for new DMs, just to gather a whole bunch of information out there, I noticed magic items keep popping up. Now, here's my opinion on magic items. Magic items is a great balancing tool. If you have people that are min-maxers, role players, adventurers, all together, and you need to kind of balance all these things out, more often than not, non-min-maxers will not do as much in combat as min-maxers. It's just going to end up being a thing where the min-maxers do a big chunk of the work and everyone else either supports them or just kind of just does just enough to get by. When I play with like really super min-max players, I find it hard to stay interested in combat, even if I am designed well. I know enough about the game in order to build a character that's efficient and that can achieve the goals that I want, but I don't min-max my characters. I'm not built that way. I don't like doing that. I'm not constantly multi-classing into whatever, because it doesn't fit how I like to play. But when I'm playing in a campaign with people that have done that to the maximum extent humanly possible, that all combat is just watching them do their thing and kind of just waiting for it to be over, I lose interest in combat. Combat becomes significantly less important to me, and less important, and every time it happens, it gets worse. In a larger group, you will have people that just kind of get stuck, never doing enough, always feeling like they're so far behind everyone else. And that is not a good feeling to have. So that's where my opinion of magic item comes in. You feed those characters magic items, and you make them strong enough that they're on the same level with everyone else. And the min-maxers that were strong enough, you do not give them as much. Everybody should get a couple of magic items, whatever it is. But I feel like people that are lacking in certain fields should get more magic items, because that builds them up to a point where they're comparable, or where they're at where they should be. The best and easiest explanation way to visualize that is through combat, because it's very easy to give you combat-oriented items. For characters that are very efficient in combat but are just kind of not doing anything else anywhere else, you can give them magical items that could have real non-combat oriented parts to them, but are really great for adventuring, for role-playing, things like that, like the hat that casts disguise self on you. that could be great and useful for players in getting involved in roleplay or espionage who are non-charismatic players or non-charisma class players or characters. And items that give them certain magical abilities, like you can turn invisible for once per day or whatever it is. Those kinds of items, those benefit those kinds of characters. Give that to your barbarian, so your barbarian's not doing nothing during heavy RP moments or in a heavy RP campaign. Give them opportunities to get involved and do things, because being a brute, though it's exciting, isn't applicable in every situation. So help balance that out. I use magic items to give everyone a good balance, availability to participate in things that they can't because they're just not built around. Because I want players to be able to take those chances, to be able to do those things, and not to be left out in the cold when those circumstances do arrive. Now, obviously, every character can't do the same thing, and every character can do everything. It's not as much fun. But these magic items are designed that, like, all right, the bard who's a lore bard has to go into this very dangerous area. Take the barbarian. You know what I mean? Like do what you can so that way the two of them can have this adventure together, as opposed to just watching one walk into the lion's den and hope nothing bad happens, because bad things happen. But that way, now the barbarian, who has no reasoning or wherewithal to be involved, can now go and be useful, as opposed to standing on the sideline waiting for something to happen so they can run in and punch something really hard. You know, give them that opportunity, make that viable to them. Does this change their character? No, their character is set in being who that character is. But know who the character is before you give them magic items. Let that play in. I don't care if my players get all the magic items they need, because that's what they want. Someone want to just adventure and find these great relics. Like, they don't even need to use them, they just want to find them. I'd do anything to get the hand and eye of Vecna. Anything. But I'm not the kind of player that you give that to. That being said, certain magic items tell a story, like the hand and the eye of Vecna. You're in a party and you're going to use the hand of Vecna, like, you're going to get dismembered to put this thing on. Like, that is something that's going to change your party dynamic. You're going to pluck out your own eye for the eye of Vecna. Like, that is insane. Totally worth it. Just for that moment, just for that, like, oh my god, I can't believe you're doing it. That's awesome. Now, one thing I do gotta say, which is kind of bringing magic items a little bit too far, there are weapons that grow in scale and power. Fizbans introduced dragon touched weapons. Explorer's Guide to Wildmount included a whole bunch of magic items that grow in level as you accomplish certain things. Now, when I pick martial classes, I design them. Like, the weapon I use is integral to who that character is. You know, it's a representation of that character. I played a fallen Aasimar conquest paladin, and he used a flail. Like that, he was wearing armor like the Dark Wraiths in Dark Souls. Like, he was skeleton armor everywhere, shield, and a flail. Like, he was a scary looking dude, but he was a conquest paladin who used fear as his bread and butter, really, for everything. Every opportunity to get a fear in there was totally worth it. That was awesome to me. That flail is menacing. It is a scary looking weapon. If I use the sword, yeah, swords are cool, but, like, is it scarier than a flail or a morning star? Like, what would you rather see a bad guy wielding? You know, like, it's just, it felt better. And as you go through the game and you gain magic items, you switch from that flail to a sword, to an axe, to this, to that. And it's great because you got a stronger weapon, but I always ended up missing my flail. So in martial classes, I'd rather have them have a weapon and have that weapon grow. Have some event occur that creates that weapon into one of the, and I'll steal the whole properties of whatever it is, and just turn it into that item. But that's how I deal with marshals, so that way they can get their magic weapons, because they need it earlier than everyone else. Because once you hit level 5, you're not hurting anything with resistance without it, unless you want to play just without magic items, which I think, again, is totally fine and totally doable. And a good enough challenge that everything feels really awesome. But marshals particularly, the only magic item they'll generally, the first magic item they'll ever really ask about is going to be a magic weapon. Take that, let them design what their character looks like and feed into that, or find another replica of that. Change the weapon, as opposed to, you found the, a great sword, and they only use, sword and board. Turn it into a regular sword, just make it work. But that's something that I think makes sense with magic items and characters and marshals. Wizards, casters, they all have a whole sequence of magical stuff that's really cool. And that's great to have, because that also gives them benefit, like the Bloodwell Vial for the sorcerers, which I believe every sorcerer should get. You just need it. It's totally worth it. There's a bunch of stuff for warlocks and bards and monks as that belt that gives them key points back. All that sort of stuff that's class oriented, give it to them. Give it to them, give it to them, give it to them, because no matter what they're doing, no matter what their arc is, they should be rewarded specifically for their class. But that's really all I got to say about magic items. Don't be afraid to give it to your party. You can always make your monsters more stronger, or use stronger monsters to compensate. Don't worry too much about that. You'll get to a point when you are finally giving out magic items that you'll be able to understand how setting up an encounter works. With all that said and done, we're going to bring this video to a close. If there are any other DM mistakes that you've seen or have encountered, definitely let us know. We'd love to cover more of them, and definitely want to hit on the subject matters that are important to you. So comment, please. And again, a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. A big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures. We're part of a live stream game Wednesday night. And check us out Thursdays for Veldcrest on our other channel, where we play live hardcore WoW. If you're interested, definitely check us out. Thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.